Ladies and gentlemen, I present week 1 of the college football slate. Welcome back in. It's Jake with Eagle Eye. It is, yes, officially here. Week 0 is past. Week 0 was okay. We saw some decent games, but it's time to actually strap in. It's time for week 1 of college football. Week 0 went okay, 7-6 overall, 2-2 on official plays, 5-4 on the leans. Nothing too crazy. Like I said, the slate was kind of rough. We had to force some plays. I'm going to go through everything we've got going on college football Thursday night. We've got a lot of football going on Thursday night. I'm going to run through all of the matchups, get you set for those. I've got leans on just about everything and a few extra plays as well. I think I've got 4 of them. So let's jump right into it. First game is going to be West Virginia, +8 at Pitt. The backyard brawl, back at it for the first time since 2011. It's also going to be the battle of ex-USC quarterbacks. It's going to be JT Daniels and Keaton Slovis facing off. Pitt's 2021 campaign was magical, but Heisman runner-up Kenny Pickett and the nation's top receiver Jordan Addison are gone, along with offensive coordinator Mark Whipple. Is it Whipple? I'm not sure. Regardless, West Virginia finds himself in a different spot. They're welcoming in a few fresh faces on offense, especially in the quarterback room. Like I said, JT Daniels transfers in, but they're also getting offensive coordinator Graham Harrell. Harrell now, he runs the air raid. He learned that under Mike Leach. For those of you that remember back even further, he won a Super Bowl with my Green Bay Packers. He transformed to bottom 25 North Texas offense back in 2015. When he left the program in 2018, they were top 26. Then he left for USC. Worked with USC for the last few years, and this is a huge part of information. He worked hand in hand with Keaton Slovis. He was his quarterback coach at USC. He knows the kid inside and out. If you don't think that's going to be a huge edge to the Mountaineers, then I'm sorry, you just really don't know football. Pitt, they're going to be transforming their offense. They're going to be focusing now on more of a balanced attack versus just relying on their athletes. I think this team relied a lot last year on their superstar quarterback wide receiver duo. The offensive scheme also was a big part of it. I've got a 1-unit play on West Virginia +8. If you're ballsy, you can take them +240. Also, if you've seen those white West Virginia jerseys, I saw them after I placed the bet. Whoa, I feel good. I feel real good about it. Game number 2 is going to be Penn State laying 3.5 at Purdue. Total in that one's 53.5. Penn State 11-11 in their past 2 seasons. I think one more rough patch, James Franklin, if he's not already in some people's minds, he's going to be on the hot seat. The defense, they allowed 17.3 points per game. They still could not crack 8 wins. The offense, they returned quarterback Sean Clifford for his 5th season, but they lose Jahan Dotson. He was one of the best playmakers in the country. Purdue, on the other hand, they haven't had this much expectation heading into a football season probably since 2005 in the Drew Brees era. They're going to return a prolific passing attack with Aiden O'Connell. That guy, I was wrong last year. Actually, in the first game of the year, I predicted him not to be the starter. He then went on to have a terrific season for the Boilermakers. Like I said, they're returning a prolific passing attack. They do add a couple of Iowa transfers at receiver, but they're going to be facing one of, if not the best back 7 in the Big Ten. The problem for the Boilermakers here is they can't become one-dimensional. As great as O'Connell in the passing attack has been, on paper, this Penn State defense thrives. It's really going to come down to, can they move the ball through the air, because they're not going to run the ball. Penn State is too good up front, and Purdue does not care about running the football. I'm going to be laying off this game. I've got no clue what Penn State team that we're going to get, and I think Purdue might be legit. It's hard to say, but it's a game that I don't know. So I'm gonna completely lay off that one. So looking at some other Power 5 teams that are in action, Minnesota gonna lay 36.5 against the New Mexico State Aggies. Total in that one's 52.5. Tanner Morgan's going to get another go for the Gophers as they look to prove they're better than their 10th rated preseason position in the Big Ten. They're going to be leaning more on the passing attack. Their top 2 backs are hitting the road for the transfer portal. However, Mohamed Ibrahim is back. If you guys remember Mohamed Ibrahim, he was very, very solid before going down with an injury last season. The 5th-year senior, he's rushed for over 3,000 yards in his career, averages 5.5 yards per carry. It'll be interesting to see how he does coming off of the injury, but I do expect a big season for him. Obviously, he'll be a big part of this offense, but what's even bigger is Kirk, and I'm going to mess this up, I think it's Ciarrocca. He was the offensive coordinator back in 2019. That 2019 team, if you guys remember, won 11 games before falling to my Badgers in the last regular season game of the season and missing the Big Ten championship. So if the Gophers can recreate even 90% of that offense, they're definitely going to be a contender in the Big Ten West because the defense is good enough. New Mexico State, one of the few teams we actually saw last weekend, they failed to cover against Nevada. They turned the ball over 5 times. They ended up scoring a touchdown, a field goal, and a safety. It was a 23-12 finish. Minnesota should control this game, but the spread's a little too lofty for me. Even though they scored just 12 points, New Mexico State's offense, they outgained the Wolfpack, and they actually ended over half their drives in plus territory. I would lean over on this one. I think the Gophers may explode offensively, but State's one of those teams that could pick up some touchdowns in garbage time. So we'll go over, and again, that total was 52.5. That is just a lean. Wake Forest minus 32 against VMI 67.5, the Virginia Military Academy, or Institute, sorry. The way the spread reads, Vegas expects VMI to hang around a little bit. The Keydets, they're an up-tempo group, very similar to Wake, but their quarterback situation's not nearly as polished. Seth Morgan is going to be the man in charge. He's coming off a 2,100-yard, 14-touchdown, 11-interception season. I went and looked at this guy on the roster. He's listed at 6'3", 193 pounds. I mean, everybody lies on that roster. Just say you're 200 pounds. 193 pounds is tiny. This kid's skinny, skinny, skinny. If Hartman was playing for Wake Forest, it'd probably be a 40 to 45 point line. However, it's going to be Michael Kern instead getting the keys to this high-powered offense. The Deacons do return one of the best receivers in college football. A.T. Perry last year had just under 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. What's more important to that is the offensive line returning 4 starters. If you've watched this team, the scheme is very, very hard to block. They do a very, very long mesh between the quarterback and the running back, and the offensive line cannot get downfield. So having 4 of those guys back, not having to reteach that, is very, very good. I'm going to lay off, though. Not a lot of knowledge on either quarterback. Going off of the 60-10 ass kicking that Kent State laid on VMI last year, I guess I would lean Demon Deacons at 32 on that one. Mizzou, going to be favorites probably for the last time this season. They are 19.5 favorites against Louisiana Tech. 60.5 is the total. The Bulldogs they canned 10-year head coach Skip Holtz in the offseason. They're going to begin the Sonny Cumbie era. Cumbie was a Texas offensive line coach. He's going to have his hands full. This team won just 3 games last year. The nepotism is already running wild as he's named Matthew Downing his starting quarterback. Downing played for him at Texas Christian TCU back in 2020 when he was the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. The redshirt junior has little to no college action, but he will have some receivers around him, especially one of the guys that definitely makes the all-name team, Smoke Harris. The defense, less than impressive, ranking outside the top 100 in yards and scoring. Mizzou, not a great Power 5 team. Vegas is telling us with this line that they're not. Under 3 touchdowns for an SEC school, bringing in a non-Power 5 team is very, very unheard of. They're going to look to change that, however. They brought in a top recruiting class, the highest in school history. However, it's not going to be an immediate impact. They're going to be more worried about the quarterback situation. Connor Bazelak, he dipped for Indiana. Not great. Not only that, they lose their top rusher and receiver in Tyler Batty last season, and they've got a new play caller in Blake Baker. Defensively, the Tigers weren't miserable against weaker opponents. They allowed under 28 points per game in games that they were favored in. 5 points better than their average. I'm going to play the under for a half unit in this game because I think both offenses are pretty anemic and will struggle to move the football. The total there, again, it was 60.5, so we'll keep that thing under. Arizona State is going to graduate from the Jaden Daniels era as they are 25.5 point favorites against in-state rival Northern Arizona. Total in that one's going to be 50.5. Like I said, Jaden Daniels is out at ASU, but Emory Jones is in. He's kind of come to the rescue as the Florida transfer, already named team captain. It's going to be a little bit of a breath of fresh air. Jaden Daniels, very good football player. If you follow him on social media, that guy had a lot going on. He was very, very interested in the NIL deals. He wanted everybody's eyes on him. When Herm Edwards is your coach, that's not going to work. Herm doesn't like those big egos. It was never really a perfect fit for them. He transferred over to LSU He was a stud, but for a guy that wasn't even a Heisman candidate, and he's going to fight for a job at LSU, I'm not terribly worried about it. Jones seems to be more humble and a better fit, especially for a team like this that needs a little bit of direction. For Northern, the question mark is going to be their defense. They allowed 439 yards per game in the FCS, and now they have to replace 5 starters. The line is staying tight because of NAU's upset over Arizona last season. Now, the Bearcats, so much worse than State. It's a little disrespectful that the line is under 30. I'll take State for a half unit in this one, lay the big number against the FCS opponent. Now we get some action. A few MAC games going on. Akron is going to be actually the first game of the day. It's a 5 o'clock kickoff here in the Midwest. They're going to be 14.5 favorites against St. Francis out of Pennsylvania. Total in that one's going to be 45.5. The Zips won twice as many games last year as they did in 2019 and 2020 combined. Unfortunately, that just meant that there were 2 wins. But to be fair, they were competitive in half of their games. I say competitive being within 17 points. Joe Moorhead's going to take over the offense that saw its starting quarterback and top 2 receivers head for Georgia Tech. That's got to be frustrating. You finally have some footing, and 3 of your top offensive guys just like, see ya. So that sucks. St. Francis, solid FCS defense. They're going to return a lot of starters. They allowed just 19 points per game. Had one of the best pass rushes in the FCS, accumulating 31 sacks in 11 games. That pass rush is going to make things difficult for an offense that's trying to find their footing and trying to get their stride. Offensively, the Red Flash scored just 22 or more points per game 3 times last year. Akron's defense isn't a masterpiece, but they should be able to hold this one tight. I don't have an official play here. I would lean the under at 45.5. That is a really low number for college football. Toledo is going to be going against Long Island University. There's no line as of Tuesday night and Wednesday morning here, so I'm going to just lay off that game completely. The next one is going to be Northern Illinois, 30.5 point favorites against Eastern with a total of 50. So last year, NIU wins the MAC. I think they got a great chance to do it again. They're going to return quarterback Rocky Lombardi, one of the best names in college football, and they're going to be returning 4 of his 5 starting offensive linemen that he had a year ago. He's going to have 3 of his top 4 targets back. He loses his top rusher, Jade Ducker. However, this is more of a fade on Eastern. Eastern was 1-10 last season in the FCS. Honestly, they're horrible. This line being under 35 points, in my opinion, is very surprising. I think the Huskies roll. This is going to be kind of their start. I think they're going to try to go back-to-back in the MAC because they do have a very good team. This is going to be a half-unit play laying the points for Northern. Fire up Chips. The Chips are going to be going on the road to face the Oklahoma State Cowboys. 21.5 point favorites for Oklahoma State with a total of 60. You know I want to back the Chips, but man, without Khalil Pimpleton, Ja'Cory Sullivan, a pair of first-team All-MAC linemen, this offense is going to look different. Those receivers accounted for 63% of Daniel Richardson's production. Our Chonk Thick King is back for another season. He's technically only a sophomore, even though this is his 4th or 5th year of college football. Gotta love the COVID rules. Last season, he amassed over 2,000 yards. He's looking at a running back in Lou Nichols that had over 2,000 yards, found the end zone 18 times. He is going to return. So I see Central kind of doing a little bit of a shift where they had a lot of, trick plays, gadget plays with Pimpleton, where this is going to be more of a strict run-first offense. State, on the other hand, they're going to get quarterback Spencer Sanders back. He's going to command an offense. They lost their top back and receiver. The defense is the highlight. They allowed just 18 points per game last year. The big question is, will the front 7 that allowed 87.6 yards per game and 2.7 yards per carry on the ground this year contain a MAC superstar? My thought is the Chips are going up a class. Although they won their bowl game, Oklahoma State's a hell of a lot better than Washington State, and the Chips are starting over in a lot of positions. The Cowboys' defense was dominant overall, but it was even better at home. If you discard the game against OU, they allowed just 93 points in 6 games. I got a hard lean on the under this game. I could see some late scoring by the Chips, so I'm not going to bet it. However, I will lean under at 60, as I do think the Oklahoma State Cowboys take care of business in that one. The next one that I'm looking at is Tennessee. Tennessee's laying 35 against Ball State. Total is 68. I hope you Ball State Cardinals fans really enjoyed the last couple of years. Unfortunately, I think this little run of good play is probably over. Quarterback Drew Pitt, wide receiver Justin Hall, free safety Bryce Cosby, and multiple all-MAC linebackers are among just some of the players that are no longer with the program. They're going to have to, Pitt's going to be replaced with John Paddock at quarterback. He's a redshirt junior, only worked in garbage time, so even though the Tennessee secondary was absolutely cheeks last year, I don't see him lighting it up in his first start. Receiver Justin Hall has next to no replacement. He was a do-it-all guy. He had 61 catches, 37 rushing attempts, returned 27 punts and kicks. Since he transferred, Jason Jackson will be the top threat on offense, but he's limited because of what the quarterback can do for him in the pass game. Tennessee, on the other hand, completely on the up and up. They're in a great spot because they do return their quarterback from a year ago, dual threat Hendon Hooker. He's actually one of the more fun quarterbacks to watch. Josh Heupel, second year as the Vols head coach, did a really good job. Obviously had a very disappointing loss in their bowl game to Purdue. However, they're back. The offense got the jolt they needed. They were outside the top 100 in production. Last year, they ended 9th. Not only is Hooker back, but he also gets his top 2 running backs. So with that three-headed rushing attack, they ranked second in the SEC a year ago. He's also going to retain his top targeted receiver, Cedric Tillman, had over 150 yards in 3 of his last 6 games last year. Tennessee, they're going to have a lot of juice coming into this one, and unless there's a complete disaster on defense, they should win this thing by 40 or more. This feels like one of those games where they run it up to 60. I've actually got a unit on the Vols to cover in that one. So running through just a few other matchups, those are going to be all the matchups that I really have much of a lean for. I'll just touch on these before we split for the day. UCF laying 37.5 against South Carolina State. Total in that one's 57. Knights had 9 wins last season. Big win over Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl. They're going to return 69% of their 21 production. They're picked to finish top 3 in the American Conference. Feels like a smaller line than needed, but a game that I won't be betting. FIU minus 13.5 against Bryant. Total in that one's 53. FIU 1-11 with no FBS wins last year. They allowed nearly 40 points per game. Mike McIntyre has a lot on his plate for a first-year head coach. UAB is going to be laying 34 against Alabama A&M, 63-point total. Feels like a really high number in this game that shouldn't feature many points from the visitors. UAB was 9-3 last year, allowed 23 points per game. This should play similarly to UAB's 31-0 win in Week 1 last year. So then San Jose State, as we get into the nightcap, they're going to own a 16.5 point spread against Portland State. Total in that one is 51.5. San Jose, they returned 2/3 of their production from a year ago. They were sub 500 and just missed bowl eligibility. Portland lost to Hawaii 49-35 and Washington State 44-24 against their only 2 FBS teams last year, so they were competitive. So I could see them hanging around in this one. It's hard to say. I didn't want to look too deep into it. And then our last game of the night is going to be Fresno State, the Chase game, minus 34 against Cal Poly, 60-point total. It should be a blowout in State's favor. There's going to be a ton of money on State as we get closer. That 21 team knocked off Cal Poly 60-10, so I don't think it's a terrible bet. Poly also finished their season 2-9, so they're not very good. So if you want to take Fresno State in the late game, you go right ahead. They should roll in that one. So that'll pretty much do it for Thursday night. I'll have some action for Friday and Saturday. Probably do something more short-winded for tomorrow night. I think there's only 8 games, but hang in there. We are getting closer and closer to Saturday. Thank you very much for listening. Again, it's Jake with Eagle Eye, and this is Balls, Sacks, and Hardwood.